Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm Deziel and today we're finishing together the first skirt pattern. Here's where we left in my last video. So my plan is complete. Now what I have to do is retrace my pattern piece. We're going to do it one at a time. So first I did place another piece of paper under my plan, and to retrace I'm going to use a tracing wheel with the needle because this one leaves smaller hole so it won't rip your paper. I'm also going to use my pattern hole to indicate both ends of the grain line and the punch hole. Finally, you saw me using these weight. It doesn't have to be real pattern weight. Any piece that has about 2.5 pounds and a right size to grab in your hand is perfect. Finally, I strongly suggest that you do pin your two paper together so they're more stable and you do a more accurate work. Before to start the tracing, I want to talk about the piece of cork that I put under my pattern piece that I have to trace. You could also use many layers of cardboard if you wish. I like to use the cork because it has a good thickness and also it's dense, so it's going to do an accurate tracing. Now to use the tracing wheel, you must put your finger right on top of the curving up line. If you don't remember, just think about it. If you put it the other way around, curving down, easily you could slip to the needle and hurt yourself. So do it the other way, much safer. Now we'll go all around, and it's a good habit to take to always start at the same place, let's say bottom center, and you go all around this way. You're sure that you don't forget any segment. Also, when you know that you have completely straight line, like the center front here, the bottom, and the side seam, this part anyway, you could do just the corner, so indicate both direction like that, and it's going to be much more accurate. Also, when you trace your curve line, I suggest you trace for a little while, then lift your tracing wheel and start over, because you'll see that the top paper has a tendency to move faster than the bottom one. When you do have very long line, even if they're straight, you could do little reference here and there. Now we're going to report all information that we need on the pattern piece. I mean, first the notch. I have one for the hip and two for the dart. Now I'm going to report my grain line. I could use my pattern hole and I'm going to indicate it with two holes. Then I'm going to need my punch hole and I'm going to indicate it with the awl. Once you finish tracing, you could remove your pins and just remove the plan. Now what I suggest is that you do a dotted line here and there where you have your dots from the tracing wheel. Then for the center, I'm going to trace my line from the top to the bottom. On the pattern, the dotted line will indicate that it's the sewing line, not the sewing value. Now I'm going to find the two little dots that I made for the grain line, and I'll be able to connect them and trace my grain line. You remember to put an arrow to indicate the bottom of the garment. Here's the bottom. The last thing I indicate is the punch hole for the dart. So I find it right here and I'm going to circle it. Now what I'll do, I'll report all my information on the grain line of the pattern piece. With the indication for the fold of the fabric. Now the pattern is almost finished. We just need to add a hem at the bottom and seam allowance on the side seam and at the waist. Now we'll start with the hem. A basic hem would be more or less 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Now to add this measurement parallel and the seam allowance, same thing, it will be a parallel measurement. It's much better if you use your transparent ruler and you use the inside line to add it parallel. In the centimeter ruler, you have every centimeter and every half centimeter for the middle part. And on the inches ruler, you have all 1/8, and you could also see the 1/4 or 1/2 inch and 1 inch. So use your ruler and trace just in one time all the hem. We do the same thing for the seam allowance of the side seam. We place it at the measurement we want for the seam allowance, and we trace all the way. Now we'll continue with the curved part of the side seam, but here you'll see that I'm going to trace just for a little while, maybe 2 centimeters. I'm going to hold it, pivot the ruler until my 1 centimeter touch the dotted line. I'll trace for another 2 cm, hold it again, pivot, trace, hold it, and I'll go like that all the way up. We always elongate a little bit the seam allowance because we need to add another one for the waist, and both lines should touch. Then I'm going to continue adding my seam allowance parallel to the waist. Even if the curve this time is going down, it's the same way. Trace for a little while, hold it and pivot. We're now ready to cut, and remember to cut inside your line so you don't enlarge your pattern. Now I stop just to give you a little tip about cutting paper. When you do cut, don't close completely your scissors. Keep always a little bit open, and when you push, it's going to slide a little bit. Just remember not to go all the way. Another little cutting tip is to see better what you're doing. Usually it's better to keep the good piece inside your scissors, just like that. Now we have one last thing to do to our pattern. It's to notch, and I will start by indicate all my notch with my red marker. The first one will be to indicate the hem, the fold line of the hem. You're going to find it just by elongating your dotted line, just like that. So my first notch. The second notch is going to be the hip notch. We already have it, so I'm just going to indicate it on the contour line. And finally, you have 2 notches for the dart. The notch that you have on the sewing line is a little bit angled. You're just going to continue the same angle to report it on the top line. Now you're going to take your notcher. This is the proper way to hold your notcher, but since we're just starting, for the first 1 or 2 pattern, we'll reverse the notcher. Use it upside down. This way you'll be able to see exactly your red line. Again, you'll see that I'm starting at the bottom, and I'm going to go do my notch all around. When you have it exactly on the line, you could notch. Then you continue with the hip notch. Then the 2 notch for the dart. Now I'm going to add an extra notch that is going to be in fact half a notch. We'll place it exactly on the center front at the waist level. So using your notcher upside down, you're going to be able to do exactly half a notch. The front pattern piece is finished. Now you'll be able to do the back, to do the tracing of the back and report all the information. But before you start tracing, remember to push your paper a little to make sure that you will have enough on this side to place your seam allowance. Now I just stop 1 minute to explain that at the center back, I'm going to do a dotted line also because it should be a seam line. If you remember, we have a zipper to place at the center back. So this is a seam line. I'm going to need to add a seam value. For that style, I decided that in the back we'll put an invisible zipper, so 1 centimeter or 3/8 seam allowance would be enough. Now we indicate with the red marker my notch. We'll start with the bottom of the skirt. We'll have to indicate the hem line both sides of the piece. Because there's a seam at center back, we have to indicate the hip notch, both notch of the dart and both notch for the zipper. Now we could cut all around. Now what we have left to do is just to notch. There you go, the first skirt pattern is finished. That's it for today. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching and I see you next time.